He walked in with nothing but a sack, old boots, and a name everyone had forgotten until today. What happened next shook an entire institution and uncovered a truth buried for over a century. This is his story, and it ends with something no one saw coming. Don't forget to subscribe to Racism Watchdog and turn on notifications to follow this powerful story and stay updated on the next chapter. It was 9:03 a.m. on a Tuesday when the double glass doors of the Hill and Ward Financial Center hissed open, and for a moment, the world outside felt like it paused. A man stepped into the lobby, slowly, deliberately, not with the bustle of the morning crowd, nor the confidence of a regular. Just presence. He was old. That was the first thing everyone noticed. Somewhere north of 80, maybe more. His back was straight, but his steps carried the patience of years. A fedora shaded his eyes. A wool coat hung from his shoulders, frayed at the cuffs. And in his right hand he held a canvas sack. Tattered, dirty, heavy with something that made it clink softly when it moved. Behind the front desk, a receptionist glanced up, then quickly back to her screen. The security guard by the espresso station shifted his weight, muttering into his shoulder mic. Most didn't pay him any mind. Some did. The kind of looks that barely hide themselves, polite curiosity laced with suspicion. Downtown was no stranger to eccentric types. Sometimes a lost vet, sometimes a drifter. Always harmless, usually in and out. But this man didn't wander. He walked like he belonged. He passed a young man in a tailored blue suit, who wrinkled his nose discreetly as he stepped aside. The old man didn't flinch, didn't look around, didn't hesitate. He made his way to the main teller queue and stood patiently behind the velvet rope, canvas sack resting against his polished black shoes. The sack looked like it had stories. The kind sewn into its seams with dust and sweat. It looked like it had been carried across decades, maybe continents. Every time the man shifted his weight, something inside shifted too. Coins? Tools? Papers? No one could tell. After a few minutes, the teller line moved and the man stepped forward. The teller was young, maybe 25. He glanced up, gave the practiced customer service smile. "Good morning, sir. How can I help you?" The old man adjusted his grip on the sack. His voice, when it came, was low and sure. "I'd like to speak to the successor of James Hill and Ward Banking Trust, 1871. The smile faltered. "I'm sorry, come again." The man repeated it, word for word like he had been practicing. "The successor of James Hill and Ward, chartered 1871. There was a pause. The teller blinked, then chuckled softly. "Sir, that was the original name of this institution, I think. But that's like over 100 years ago." The old man didn't move, didn't smile. He simply nodded. "I know." Another pause. The teller glanced to his left, toward the manager's desk. "One moment, sir." As the teller stepped away, hushed whispers began near the back offices. Two men in charcoal suits looked over, murmuring. A woman in pearls leaned in to catch the gossip. The security guard took a step closer. Back at the front desk, the receptionist whispered under her breath, "I think he's confused. Should we call someone?" But no one moved, because the man wasn't doing anything wrong. Just standing there, holding that bag, waiting. His name was Elijah Boone. 84 years old, born in Mississippi, fought in Korea, spent 47 years as a groundskeeper at a local university, retired with no fanfare, no family pictures in his wallet, no known children or living spouse. A ghost to some, a mystery to most. But to the small community where he lived, he was something else entirely. The kind of man who tipped every waitress, remembered every birthday, fixed your porch steps for free. The kind of man who didn't talk about his past but never forgot yours. He had lived in the same one-bedroom house for 62 years. The roof had been replaced 5 times. The lawn always trimmed. The porch always swept. No complaints, no debts, just quiet. just routine. So when Elijah Boone walked into Hill and Ward that Tuesday morning, the world didn't notice. But it was about to. "Sir," the teller returned, this time with a manager in tow. "This is Mr. Reyes, one of our branch leads. Maybe he can help." Mr. Reyes had the cautious smile of a man trying to avoid a lawsuit. "Good morning, Mr. Elijah Boone." "Mr. Boone, can you tell me a bit more about your request?" "I need to speak to someone in authority about a matter of ownership." There it was again, that quiet authority in his tone. The kind that didn't beg, didn't push, just was. Mr. Reyes cleared his throat. "Okay, ownership of what exactly?" The man slowly set the canvas sack on the floor between them. "Of this bank." Silence. Someone behind them snorted. "Sir," Mr. Reyes began, cautious, "you're saying you own the bank?" "No." Elijah shook his head. "I'm saying I inherited it." That was when the laughter started. Not loud, not cruel, just that awkward office kind. The kind that leaks from cubicles and coffee counters when something doesn't make sense. One of the analysts whispered to a friend, "This some kind of prank show." Another guy leaned over, chuckling. Man came in with a burlap sack like he's Santa with stock options. Security took another step closer. Mr. Reyes tried to keep it professional. "Mr. Boone, I'm afraid we need documentation if you're claiming something like that. Do you have anything that could help us understand your request?" Elijah nodded once, bent down, and opened the sack. At first, no one could see what was inside. His hand reached in slowly, carefully, as though touching something sacred. He pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. Worn, cracked, its spine barely held together by time. Then a second item, a folded document, edges yellowed, with a wax seal so brittle it crumbled at the edges. Then finally, a single envelope, hand-addressed, in cursive ink faded by nearly a century. It read, "To be delivered upon final maturity of trust, successor of Hill and Ward, 1871. He held it up. Silence fell. Even the laughter stopped. Mr. Reyes blinked. "Where did you get that?" Elijah looked him dead in the eye. "My grandfather was a porter. Here. In 1902. He helped build the vault room downstairs. In 1929 he was asked to help hide something before the crash. In 1946 my father came with a letter. They turned him away." He paused. "In 1981 I started asking questions." Another pause. "In 2023 I found the answers." He looked around now, calm, measured. His eyes scanned the polished marble floor, the chrome light fixtures, the scrolling stock tickers. "I've been carrying this for 40 years." The room was still, and then Elijah stepped forward, placed the envelope carefully on the counter. "I believe you'll want to open this with your legal counsel present." Mr. Reyes didn't speak. Neither did the guard. Someone in the back began dialing. Elijah turned to the crowd, voice steady. "James Hill made a promise. Ward signed it. My grandfather sealed it. I'm here to collect." He picked up the sack, rested it on the marble again, and waited. That was the moment everything shifted. Phones began to buzz. Executives were paged. Legal teams were summoned. And across the street, in a coffee shop overlooking the glass-paneled bank, a freelance journalist looked up from her latte. She had been watching the old man since he walked in, and she knew something was off. So she pulled out her phone, hit record, and captured what would later go viral as the Sackman revelation. Back inside, Mr. Reyes was whispering frantically into a phone. The envelope had been passed, unopened, to an assistant in legal. People were scrambling, and no one, not a single person, was laughing anymore. Elijah Boone stood still, calm as ever. Like he'd been here before. Like he knew exactly how this would go. As tension built, a paralegal returned, her face pale. She leaned in and whispered something into Mr. Reyes' ear. His eyes widened. He looked up at Elijah, now visibly sweating. You need to come with me, sir." Elijah nodded, lifted the sack, and followed the man past the velvet rope, past the gold-plated doors into the restricted offices of the bank. The receptionist tried to peek through the glass. The security guard held back a group of curious onlookers. And just before the doors swung shut, Elijah turned back briefly and said one line just loud enough for the room to hear. "You shouldn't have buried it." Love this video. Smash that subscribe button and hit the share icon right now to help grow this community. Turn on notifications so you never miss a new video. Comment below with what you want to see next. I read every reply. Every sub and share helps me create more content you love. Thanks for being awesome. 1956 Mississippi. A one-room house lit by kerosene, the night thick with crickets and silence. A young Elijah Boone sat cross-legged on the floor, eyes wide, as his grandfather slid an old cigar box from beneath a loose floorboard. The box creaked open to reveal yellowing papers, faded photographs, and a single worn fountain pen wrapped in cloth. "This here," his grandfather said, voice low and steady, "ain't just papered, Eli. This is the last piece of what they stole." He unfolded a document so fragile it seemed to tremble in the candlelight. Charter, 1871. Black folks built a bank after the war. We weren't waiting for no handouts. We made our own way. Young Elijah squinted at the fine print, not understanding most of the words, but understanding weight. But then they changed the names, moved the money, burned the records, said it never happened. His grandfather tapped the paper. "But it did happen. I was born from it. So were you?" Present day, Hill and Ward Financial Center, 9:51 a.m. Elijah sat in a side room just off the lobby, beneath a flickering overhead light. His sack rested quietly by his feet. Across the table, Devin, the youngest associate banker on staff, was scrolling through a tablet, clearly irritated. "So, Mr. Boone, you're saying this entire financial institution is built on, what, stolen money?" "Not stolen," Elijah replied calmly. "Rebranded, repackaged, then inherited by people who never earned it." Devin scoffed. "Look, man, no offense, but this isn't a movie. We can't just hand you stock options because your great-granddaddy worked here. Do you have any current legal standing?" Elijah said nothing. Instead, he reached down, unzipped the sack again, and pulled out a thick folder bound in twine. He slid it across the table without a word. Devin hesitated, then opened it. The first page bore a gold-embossed seal, faint but unmistakable. It was a notarized copy of a trust document, dated 1871, amended 1904, again in 1945, and finally, most recently, 1981. Elijah's name was handwritten beside the word, "Living Trustee." Devin's brow furrowed. He flipped the next page, then another. Inside were photocopies of deeds from Jackson, Mississippi, signed by James Hill and Franklin Ward, affirming the foundation of a black-owned financial institution post-Civil War. Legal transfers showing land and gold equity holdings placed in trust for black freedmen and heirs to avoid state seizure during Reconstruction. Letters between Hill and a man named Elijah Rollins Boone, Elijah's grandfather, discussing silent equity and his desire to remain behind the scenes to avoid lynchings or forced sales. A 1929 ledger of deposits rerouted during the crash, hidden beneath shell companies now registered under the modern Hill and Ward Financial Trust. Certified statements from attorneys who later lost the original charter, but whose signatures matched the ones in the trust agreement Elijah had preserved. Devin looked pale now. You kept all this?" "I collected all this," Elijah corrected. "Took me 43 years. Flashback, 1981, Small Claims Court, Jackson, and Seth. Elijah stood alone before a bored judge. "They said I needed standing," he later recalled. "So I got a standing ovation of rejections. No one would listen. Not the county clerk. Not the state bank commission. He filed FOIA requests, made trips to dusty archives, Even snuck into the basement of a closed courthouse just to snap pictures of water-damaged ledgers. He recorded interviews with old men at VFW halls who remembered Mr. Boone's daddy being run out of town for asking the wrong questions. He once found an original receipt from a 1919 gold deposit, signed and stamped, buried in the wall of his childhood home. Elijah copied it all, cataloged it, laminated what he could, stored everything else in vacuum-sealed boxes in a temperature-controlled storage unit. Because memory fades, he told himself, but evidence doesn't. Back in the bank room, Devin swallowed hard. Okay, maybe you've got something. But this has to go through legal. I mean, this is ancient history, Mr. Boone. Elijah leaned back. Funny thing about history, it always returns to collect interest. Devin stood up, muttering as he walked out, "Unbelievable." Flashback, 1963, Chicago. Elijah, freshly returned from Korea, sits in a bus terminal, clutching a manila envelope with a handwritten address. He was supposed to meet a lawyer, someone who claimed to have handled Hill and Ward's legacy estate. No one ever showed. Later, he learned the firm had merged and changed names. Records destroyed in a fire. Case closed. But Elijah never stopped looking. In the bank lobby, word had spread. Customers were whispering. The receptionist now had her phone tilted discreetly, filming. Security paced. Mr. Reyes reappeared, holding the envelope Elijah had given him earlier. His face was pale. "Mr. Boone, our general counsel, would like to meet with you personally." Elijah said nothing, just nodded. Then turned to the room and addressed everyone, not loudly, but clearly. "This isn't about money," he said. "This is about memory. My grandfather didn't survive 2 race riots just for his name to be erased. My father didn't get turned away in 1946, so his son could sit silent in 2025. A few people lowered their phones. The mood had shifted again. Flashback, 1994, Elijah's kitchen table. Dozens of papers spread across the table. Deeds, photos, handwritten letters. A cassette recorder spinning slowly as an old man recounted how Hill and Ward absorbed 6 black-owned banks during the early 1900s by buying out white proxies and using the Freedman savings scandal as leverage. "They told us it was a merger," the voice said on the tape, "but it was a funeral. Present day." "Sir, we're going to have to ask you to step outside," said another security guard. "Under what grounds?" Elijah asked. "We're not sure yet," the man replied, clearly uncomfortable. "But corporate wants you off premises until the paperwork is verified." That's when Devin came back. He was smirking again, though this time it seemed more forced. "I talked to legal. They said even if your papers are real, statute of limitations would have expired decades ago. This is going nowhere, old man." Elijah didn't flinch. He simply reached into his coat, pulled out one more document, sealed in clear plastic. Devin rolled his eyes. "What now?" "This," Elijah said, placing it on the table, "is a continuing trust instrument, unexpired, unconcluded, and protected by federal financial preservation clauses, enacted in 1976. Devin blinked. "What?" Elijah leaned forward. "That means the trust is still alive. Which means I'm still trustee. Which means your bank is standing on my grandfather's equity." Devin stared at it. "That's not possible." Then Mr. Reyes picked it up. He read the language. His hands began to tremble. He looked toward the elevator, picked up the phone, and dialed. His voice dropped low, barely above a whisper. "Sir, you need to come down here. Now." Flashback, 1973, University grounds, Jackson. Elijah trims hedges outside the law library, where he overhears a professor mention a case involving latent trust conflicts and fraudulent rebranding. That night, he breaks protocol and sneaks into the library basement. There, he discovers a trail of case files, all pointing to the same core strategy: create shell banks, erase black ownership, rebrand assets under conglomerate branches, and destroy paper trails. That was the day Elijah knew. They knew. Back in the present. The elevator pinged. Out stepped a man in his 60s, dark gray suit, white hair, tight lips. He scanned the room. Elijah Boone? Yes. I'm Grant Winston, lead counsel for Hill and Ward Holdings. He motioned for Elijah to sit. What you brought today is serious. But even if these documents are valid, we'd need time. Chain of custody. Proof of standing. I have it. Winston blinked. Tax records, recorded trustee designations, and a signed affidavit from your predecessor's estate acknowledging undissolved fiduciary duty. Elijah pulled out a final sheet. Winston read it. Sat down, and for the first time that day, said nothing. Outside the office, murmurs grew louder. A notification buzzed on someone's phone. An anonymous post with the headline, "Old man claims he owns Hill and Ward, gets escorted to vault." People were watching now. Not just the bank. The world. Mr. Reyes returned. Sir, legal has confirmed, at least preliminarily, the documents are authentic and enforceable. Devon's mouth dropped open. You've got to be kidding me. Elijah stood slowly. This isn't a joke, son, he said. This is 150 years of quiet, and today's the day it breaks. Winston turned to him, his face unreadable. There will be litigation, pushback, NDAs. You'll be offered a settlement. I'm not here for silence, Elijah said firmly. I'm here for justice, for memory, for every grandfather who was promised something and buried with nothing. A long pause. Winston nodded once, then picked up the phone again. This is Winston. Clear the boardroom. He's coming up. 10:32 a.m. Top floor, Hill and Ward Financial Headquarters. The boardroom was cold, intentionally so. Polished wood, sleek screens, muted tones designed to disarm. The kind of place made for contracts and compromises. Elijah Boone sat calmly at the far end, Sack still beside him, as a new figure entered. She was young, mid-30s at most, sharp suit, gold cufflinks, sleek glasses. Her nameplate read, Nia Harrington, Regional Executive VP. Nia extended a hand but hesitated midair, unsure whether to offer respect or authority. Elijah looked up, then down at her badge. So they finally sent someone born after color TV, he murmured. There were light chuckles around the table, but Nia didn't laugh. She took her seat. Mr. Boone, she began cautiously, we've reviewed the documents you presented. Your position is not without merit. Is that lawyer talked for? We didn't expect anyone to keep receipts. Nia blinked. Elijah reached into his folder. Unfolded a brittle yellow document. This is the original founding agreement for the Freedmen's Bank of Progress, 1871. My grandfather, Elijah Rollins Boone, was listed as a silent equity holder. They didn't put his name on the window, but they put it on this. He tapped the paper. Nia leaned forward. The clause was unmistakable. In the event of non-renewal after 99 years, equity reverts to original familial stakeholders unless formally dissolved by court or vote. That clause had expired in 1970. No dissolution was ever filed. For over 50 years, no one noticed. Until now. Downstairs in the lobby, tension was boiling. Customers were gathered near the front desk. Security had stopped trying to disperse the crowd. A young woman in her 20s, Jetta, a local student, held up her phone. She was live streaming. Y'all, this man walked in with a sack and a story, and now half the bank's in panic mode. The execs are upstairs, and he's dropping receipts like it's a courtroom. The comment section lit up. This real? His voice steady AF. Better than Netflix. Black Wall Street vibes for Tag me in part 2. Within minutes, her stream had 12,000 live viewers. Back upstairs, Elijah slid more documents across the table. You see, I've done the work. Deeds, court orders, family statements, affidavits. I'd even found this. He opened a smaller folder and passed it to Nia. Inside was a 1943 letter from a former Hill and Ward attorney admitting, confidentially, that the bank had absorbed 6 black-owned financial institutions, under advisement, during segregation, promising silent equity to founding families until they were no longer traceable. They were counting on our erasure, Elijah said. But I kept tracing. Nia's composure faltered. Mr. Boone, we understand the gravity of this, but there are legal procedures. Discovery. Due process. Elijah raised an eyebrow. That only applies when the court isn't bought. I've already started the filings. This isn't about waiting anymore. It's about reckoning. Flashbacks rippled through his voice. 1987 Jackson. He's denied a home loan from the very bank his family helped build. 1999 Chicago. He watches a documentary about Bruce's Beach and whispers, "We had one of those too." 2021. News reports flood in. Evanston votes for reparations. Tulsa survivors testify before Congress. Elijah cuts the newspaper clips, taping them next to photos of his grandfather. Each moment built to this one. Nia stood. "We can offer a settlement." The room stiffened. She glanced to Winston, the firm's counsel, who nodded. "We're prepared to offer you a package," she continued. "A financial resolution, in exchange for confidentiality." Elijah didn't flinch. He didn't even blink. He reached into the sack, now noticeably lighter, pulled out a final envelope, aged, sealed, untouched. "You think I came here for money?" He placed it gently on the table. "This is the original charter. Signed, sealed, unbroken." The seal bore a wax imprint, a triangle wrapped in a wreath, the old symbol of the Freedmen's Bank of Progress. Nia looked stunned. Winston leaned forward, eyes wide. "That can't be." Elijah looked around. "You erased our names, rewrote our stories, but you forgot one thing." He tapped the charter. This paper never forgot. Downstairs, Jetta's stream exploded. 52,000 viewers now. Her voice cracked. The L. He just dropped some kind of old-ass charter, and they all low-key SHOK. The chat exploded. His grandfather was co-founder. Is this the real life? I work at HQ. Confirm. This is real. Reparation in real time. He walked in with legacy. Outside the bank, a few newsvans had pulled up. Camera crews jumped out. Back upstairs. Silence. Only the hum of the AC. Then sirens. Not for danger, but for press. Justice had gone viral. Elijah stood slowly. My grandfather fought in a war. Then came home and got denied a loan at the very bank he helped start. My father worked janitorial shifts here. Couldn't afford the mortgage. I trimmed the hedges outside this building for 20 years. He stepped to the wall. Touched the marble plaque bearing the names of Hill, Ward, and their descendants. This wall has names, he said quietly. But none of them are mine. He pulled a folded paper from his pocket, a photo of the original staff dated 1873. In the back, 3 black men stood in suits, one of them clearly Elijah's grandfather. There he is, Elijah said softly. They said he was a porter, but he was a partner. He turned to Nia. Let me ask you something. She nodded. How many names are still missing from the walls? The camera cut to outside. Reporters scrambled. Social media threads exploded. Breaking, 84-year-old man claims bank ownership, backed by historic records. The new 2LSA. Documents suggest century-long cover-up. Black founders erased from bank history. Now descendant return. Inside, Winston looked visibly shaken. We'll need to review everything. Elijah's voice was calm. You've had 150 years. A siren wails. The press rushes the doors. The stream hits 103,000 viewers. Then silence. A single frame. Elijah standing before the marble plaque, holding the charter in one hand, the sack empty at his feet. Sometimes justice doesn't come with a gavel. Sometimes it walks in with a sack. And the question we all have to ask is, how many names are still missing from the walls? Look again. It might be yours. Subscribe to hear the rest of Elijah's journey, because his story is only the beginning. Comment below. Do you know your family's history? Ever wondered what was taken or never returned? Dig deeper. Learn more about real efforts to reclaim lost Black wealth, like Bruce's Beach, the Evanston Reparations program, and Where is My Land? Share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Legacy can't be lost if we remember to carry it.